Right, in the last video clip, I said that profit arises from the fact that what is bought and sold in the labour market is not labour, but labour power, that the value of labour power is determined quite separately from the new value produced by labour, and that you get paid a bigger or a smaller pittance for your labour power, enough to keep you coming back as a worker the next month or the next week. What you produce by your labour is something much bigger and constantly made much bigger by the mechanisms of capitalism. As Marx puts it, the worker cannot become rich in this exchange because the exchange is designed to reproduce you as a worker. What I want to say a little bit about now, before we go on to other things, is other theories of profit. Now, if you look at a standard economics textbook and look very carefully, you will probably find somewhere the startling idea that in economic equilibrium, if everything is going smoothly, if competition is perfect, profits will always be zero. Which is a bit odd, because if that were actually true, you wonder how capitalism would operate at all, because capitalists go into it for profit. There's no dissimulation about that. They say their job is to make profits. The first line explanation is that, profits are a transitional phenomenon which arises from the fact that the economy is never in exact equilibrium. But that sits ill with the fact that it's not just, brand new startups or companies which have a monopoly which make profits, but perfectly ordinary capitalist corporations doing the same thing every year, technology not changing very much, they still make profits. The second line defence is that what they're concerned with is what they call just profit of enterprise, and there's a whole series of other categories which we as Marxists think of as profit, which are not included. So they have a category which is called wages of management. They have a category which is called reward for risk. And they have a category which used to be called in Marx's time the reward for abstinence. But today would be called revenues accruing because of time preference. The short answer is that these incomes exist. As Marxists, we regard them as deductions as parts of surplus value, not as separate flows of income coming from separate factors of production. Risk is a factor of production, management is a factor of production, entrepreneurship is a factor of production, and so on. We regard them as payments out of surplus value for the functions that the capitalist has to perform. This capitalist has to, out of the surplus value, has to manage, has to provide for risks, and so on. The baseline argument here is really the one about which you get when you push, is the one about time preference. And that says, roughly, that, of course, labour attracts a wage because people are naturally idle. If we weren't paid wages, we would stay in bed all day. And wages are set at the level which gets enough workers to get up and go to work rather than stay in bed all day. Which is an odd theory if you think about it, because it said that wages would be higher in countries where people were lazier and lower in countries where people are hard-working. So the way to conduct a struggle for higher wages would be to go around campaigning for laziness. If anything, the contrary is true. Countries where capitalism is thriving tend to develop a general strong sense of wanting to work and have higher wages. Countries where capitalism is not so well developed tend not to develop such a strong sense of wanting to work. Conversely, profits arise from the supposed fact that everybody prefers to consume something now rather than in the future. You would rather have instant gratification than something nice in a week's time. Now, firstly, it's doubtful whether this is a universal psychological truth. If you were told you can have all your week's dinners today, instead of having them spread at one a day over the week, you probably say, I'd rather have one a day over the week. And the psychological experiment it proposes for the capitalists is a bit of an odd one, because it says that the capitalists get this income from the fact that they don't consume all their wealth straight away. They don't just sell off all their factories, all their offices, all their assets, go out, have very big dinners, buy more yachts, and come back the next day with all their money spent. Instead, they're abstemious and they don't sell off their factories. And you think, well, who are they going to sell these factories to? How is the whole capitalist class going to do that? An individual capitalist can just sell his or her factory and then just have lots of big dinners. But the capitalist class as a whole can't. It depends on a completely artificial psychological experiment, thought experiment. The short answer is you cannot explain profit unless you have an independent way of valuing the inputs to production and the outputs of production. And no orthodox economic theory gives you that independent way of valuing the inputs and the outputs. The only one that does, that has been developed so far, is the labour theory of value in the form that Marx developed it.